In the silent halls of medieval Europe, beneath the cold stones of forgotten monasteries, a book was born that would carry the weight of dread and fascination through the centuries. It was called the Codex Gigas, but the world would come to know it by a darker name: the Devil's Bible. Legend says it was crafted in a single night, a night soaked in desperation and shadow. A Benedictine monk, condemned for a grave and unforgivable sin, faced the horror of being walled alive, a slow, suffocating death reserved for the most irredeemable. In a final, frantic bid for salvation, he made a vow: he would create a book that contained all human knowledge, glorifying his monastery for eternity, and he would do it before the sun rose. As midnight deepened and his ink-stained hands trembled with exhaustion, the monk realized the task was impossible. In despair, he abandoned his prayers to the heavens and turned to the abyss instead. Kneeling in the dark, he invoked a presence few dared to name. He offered his soul in exchange for help, and the darkness answered. When the monks unlocked the chamber at dawn, they found the book complete. An impossible feat. A single scribe could not, by any earthly means, have accomplished such a work overnight. It was massive, almost 3 feet tall, weighing over 160 pounds. Its pages crafted from the skins of 200 animals. Its ink still fresh with the scent of strange herbs. Within it were texts of sacred scripture, histories of nations, magical spells, medical treatises, exorcism rites, a compendium of light and shadow bound together in chilling harmony. But it was not the book's sheer size or its breadth of knowledge that struck terror into the hearts of those who beheld it. It was the image, hidden within its pages. A full-page portrait of the devil himself. Towering, horned, crouched in a prison of darkness, the figure seemed almost alive, his green talons reaching toward the reader as if to seize the soul that dared to gaze upon him too long. Why would such an image be enshrined in a work that otherwise glorified divine wisdom? No satisfactory answer was ever given. It was as if the book itself was a gateway not merely to religious knowledge, but to the forbidden crossroads where salvation and damnation meet. The Codex Gigas became an object of dread and awe. Monarchs fought over it, cities burned to possess it. It passed through the hands of kings, generals, and secretive orders, each custodian leaving behind a trail of rumors, tragedies, and whispered curses. Some said those who dared to read it aloud would invite misfortune upon their families. Others claimed that the book shifted its contents at night, rewriting itself when no eyes were watching. And yet, despite its aura of darkness, the Codex Gigas endured. A living relic of a time when knowledge was a double-edged sword, capable of exalting the spirit or damning it forever. Thus was born the legend of the forbidden pages. Whispers of sections that once existed within the Codex. Pages that were torn away, hidden, or destroyed. Pages that perhaps held knowledge too potent, too dangerous, too liberating for the world to bear. What was removed? What truths were buried under layers of silence? The book remains, massive, silent, patient, guarding its secrets against the hunger of the centuries. And the shadows that birthed it still linger, waiting for the day when the lost pages will speak once more. To stand before the Codex Gigas is to feel the weight of something that does not entirely belong to this world. It towers like a relic hewn from myth, nearly 3 feet in height, more massive than any other medieval manuscript ever created. Its pages, thick and yellowed with the breath of centuries, seem to pulse faintly, as though remembering hands that once turned them with reverence or trembling. The immensity of the book is not merely in its size, it is in its ambition. Within its covers lies a universe. Sacred texts, histories, medical guides, even incantations to drive out demons. It is a strange fusion, holy and profane, science and sorcery, light and shadow braided together like threads, spun by a mind no longer tethered to ordinary reason. The materials used in its creation whisper further mysteries. The parchment was crafted from the skins of more than 200 animals, most likely calves or donkeys. The consistency of the script, The uniformity of the careful Gothic lettering across hundreds of pages suggests that the same hand penned every word, a feat so immense that even under normal circumstances, it would have required decades of labor. Yet legend insists it was completed in a single night. The anomalies deepen the enigma. Certain sections of the Codex seem out of place, sudden shifts in content that defy logical organization. Biblical texts flow seamlessly into strange incantations. Exorcism rites sit uneasily beside medical treatises. One moment the reader walks among the sacred halls of Scripture, the next they are plunged into grimoires of demonology. Most chilling of all is the portrait of the devil, unlike any depiction found elsewhere in medieval Christian art. Here the figure is not the tempter disguised in subtlety, but the monster laid bare, massive, grotesque, enthroned in darkness with claws sharp enough to tear the soul from flesh. Opposite this unholy image stands a portrayal of the heavenly city, the sacred New Jerusalem. Yet this symmetry feels less like a triumph of good over evil and more like a warning that both light and darkness reside within the same binding, within the same heart. Scholars have puzzled endlessly over the strange features of the Codex. Some suggest it was intended as a moral compendium, a reflection of humanity's dual nature. Others believe it concealed secret teachings, a map not of earthly kingdoms, but of spiritual realms layered invisibly atop the world we see. Yet it is the missing pages, their torn, ragged edges haunting the manuscript, that ignite the deepest unease. Gaps where knowledge once lived, silences where forbidden songs once sang. What was removed, and by whose hand? Was it fear that tore those pages out, greed, or a knowledge so shattering that it could never be allowed to see the light of day? The Codex Gigas does not answer. It only waits, heavy, silent, vast, its gaps more eloquent than its words, its mysteries more potent than its revelations. And so the seekers come, generation after generation, drawn not only to what remains, but to what has been lost. Among the countless enigmas that cloak the Codex Gigas, none cast a longer, darker shadow than the missing pages. As surely as the book's colossal weight speaks of ancient labor, the torn edges and silent gaps speak of deliberate erasure, acts not of accident, but of will. Pages that once lived within its binding are gone, and with them, perhaps, a knowledge the world was never meant to hold. The physical evidence is undeniable. At least 12 leaves, 24 pages, were removed from the manuscript. Their absence is not random. The cuts are clean, purposeful, and the Codex's meticulous pagination confirms the loss. Yet no official record explains who excised them, or why. No scribe's note laments the omission, no chronicle speaks of their contents. They simply vanished. The earliest known owners of the Codex remain silent on the matter. Emperor Rudolph II, who paid dearly for the manuscript, left no mention of the missing sections, despite his obsessive fascination with the occult. Later custodians, too, treated the gaps as inconvenient mysteries, better left unspoken. Speculation thrives where silence reigns. Some believe the missing pages contained additional grimoires, works of sorcery too potent, too direct, for even a world accustomed to hidden rites. Perhaps rituals of summoning, of transmutation, or of walking between worlds. Others suggest they held forbidden histories, accounts of ancient wars between celestial forces, or revelations about humanity's true origins, lost to all but a few initiated souls. There are theories that the missing leaves were never destroyed but hidden, secreted away by those who understood their peril. Perhaps they lie in forgotten vaults beneath monasteries, or locked in the invisible libraries of secret societies who guard mankind not from external enemies, but from truths too vast, too terrible for the fragile mind to bear. One persistent legend tells of a monk who, upon glimpsing the forbidden pages, was driven to madness, clawing at his own eyes to erase what he had seen. Another whispers that the pages themselves were alive, that they revealed not static words but shifting visions, changing with each reader according to the darkness within their own soul. Why then would someone remove them? Was it an act of mercy, shielding humanity from a revelation that could tear the veil of reality? Or was it an act of greed, the hoarding of sacred power by those who wish to keep the keys of heaven and hell for themselves? The Codex offers no answer. Its silence is its shield. Yet in the absence, the imagination ignites. And perhaps that was always the true design, to awaken in the seeker a hunger not merely for knowledge, but for transformation. The missing pages call not to the mind, but to the soul's deeper memory, a memory of things once known, once lived, before the gates of forgetfulness closed behind us. And somewhere, across the seas of time, the forbidden words still whisper, waiting to be remembered by those brave enough to seek beyond the seen. There are kinds of knowledge that bend the world around them, truths so potent they are not simply facts to be understood, but forces to be survived. The Codex Gigas, in its silent grandeur, hints that it once contained such forbidden knowledge, carefully inscribed and then violently concealed. The nature of the Codex, even in its surviving form, dances along a razor's edge. Scripture beside sorcery, prayers beside exorcisms, healing arts beside dark invocations. It is not a book of purity, but of totality, reflecting a cosmos where light and darkness are not enemies, but twin currents weaving the same vast river. What, then, might the missing pages have contained, so dangerous that they were torn from history? Some scholars speculate that these lost leaves held grimoires of forbidden arts, rituals of summoning not merely spirits but primordial forces, older and more terrible than any name uttered by priests. Spells to break the boundaries between worlds, to speak directly with beings not of flesh and bone, but of light and shadow. Such knowledge would grant its wielder not merely earthly power but dominion over unseen realms. Others whisper that the missing pages detailed secret sciences, not the mechanical science of tools and weapons, but the ancient science of the soul. Instructions for transmuting the self, ascending the ladders of spirit beyond the chains of mortality. Techniques to awaken dormant senses, to pierce the veil of reality and walk freely between the visible and the hidden. Still others believe the pages contain revelations about humanity itself, truths that shatter the sanctioned narratives of origin and destiny. That we are not the creatures of dust alone, but the exiled scions of cosmic kingdoms, our memories erased, our powers sealed away by forces both divine and profane. The Codex may have held maps of these forgotten realms, formulas for unlocking latent faculties buried deep within the blood and bone of every soul. Perhaps it offered a path to sovereignty over one's own being, a threat so profound to earthly powers that the only response was erasure. The very act of removal betrays the magnitude of the threat. Mere heresies are denounced, burned, debated, but knowledge of a higher order, knowledge that threatens the very architecture of control, is not refuted. It is hidden, buried, excised from the collective mind. Those who glimpsed the lost pages may have seen not madness, but liberation. And it was liberation, not damnation, that the custodians of power feared most. Thus, the Codex Gigas stands not simply as a relic of medieval ambition, but as a survivor of a war fought not with armies, but with silence and forgetting. A war to suppress the memory of what humanity once knew and what it may yet reclaim. And though the forbidden pages are gone from sight, the hunger they inspire endures. A hunger not for conquest, but for remembrance. For the return of a wisdom that once crowned humanity not as slaves of fear, but as heirs to the infinite. Throughout history, the greatest truths have rarely been silenced by argument, they have been silenced by force. And so it was, perhaps, with the Codex Gigas, a work whose missing pages hint not at loss by accident, but at a deliberate act of guardianship or censorship, depending on the eyes that behold it. Who were the ones who touched those forbidden leaves and deemed them too perilous to survive? Who bore the burden, or claimed the right, to decide what humanity was permitted to know? Many point to the medieval church, an institution both protector and gatekeeper of knowledge. The Codex Gigas was born within monastic walls, nurtured in a time when spiritual knowledge was seen as a double-edged sword, a gift that could exalt or destroy, depending on who wielded it. The Church understood the dangers of forbidden texts, Grimoires and heretical writings were routinely gathered and hidden, or burned where others could see, yet the Codex was different. It was too vast, too integrated with Holy Scripture, too alive to simply destroy. Thus, excision became the tool, quiet removal, silent erasure. Later, in the hands of kings and emperors, men like Rudolf II, whose obsessions with the occult were whispered with both awe and terror, the Codex entered a new arena of secrecy. Royal collectors sought not only wisdom but power, and they understood that certain knowledge could be weaponized. What was missing may have been reserved for the eyes of sovereigns and sorcerers alone, hoarded as invisible arsenals in the ceaseless struggles for dominion. But there is a darker possibility still. Some believe that secret societies, guardians of ancient wisdom stretching back beyond the rise of Christianity, may have had a hand in the Codex's mutilation. To them, certain truths must not be merely hidden, they must be protected, preserved from the unworthy, shielded from those who would desecrate sacred knowledge through arrogance or greed. To these silent orders, the act of removing the pages would not have been vandalism, but an act of sacred stewardship, ensuring that only those with purified hearts and awakened minds could ever hope to recover the lost wisdom through inner ascent, rather than outward reading. Whether by religious decree, royal ambition, or secretive guardianship, the result was the same. The pages vanished, and with them a river of knowledge sank beneath the sands of time. Yet echoes remain. In the Codex's colossal presence, in its unnatural coherence, in the fear and awe it still inspires centuries later. The ones who censored the book sought to control a fire they could not extinguish. They could tear the pages from flesh and vellum, but they could not tear the yearning from the human soul, the unquenchable hunger to remember what was lost. And it is that hunger that the Codex Gigas continues to feed, silently, endlessly, waiting for the day when those who seek will no longer be shackled by fear, but empowered by remembrance. The Codex Gigas, heavy with the breath of forgotten centuries, has not rested quietly in its silent exile. Like a stone dropped into still water, its presence sent ripples across history, echoes of awe, fear, obsession, and longing that continue to reverberate through the corridors of human memory. After its creation, the Codex journeyed through the shadows of Europe's troubled past. Monasteries that housed it spoke in hushed tones of strange occurrences. Monks driven to visions, flickering lights seen dancing above the manuscript at night, and inexplicable accidents that befell those who lingered too long over its forbidden pages. When Emperor Rudolf II acquired the Codex in the late 16th century, it was not simply as a collector of curiosities. Rudolf, obsessed with alchemy, astrology, and secret sciences, recognized the book as more than a relic. He believed it contained pieces of the ancient wisdom he sought to resurrect. Fragments of a world where man could speak with angels, command the elements, and transcend the fragile boundaries of flesh. Yet those who sought to possess the Codex often met strange fates. Fortunes crumbled, dynasties fell, and rulers who clutched the manuscript with greedy hands found their reigns tarnished by scandal, madness, and decline. The Codex seemed less a trophy than a mirror, reflecting back the deepest ambitions and the darkest fears of those who dared to claim it. Wars broke out around it, armies seized it as spoils of conquest, believing it a talisman of power. It passed through the chaos of revolutions and invasions, surviving fires, floods, and centuries of human tumult, almost as if protected by a force that defied ordinary destruction. In every place it lingered, the Codex stirred strange energies. Some said the dreams of entire cities were haunted when the Devil's Bible rested within their walls. Others claimed miraculous healings or sudden revelations. It seemed to amplify whatever forces, light or dark, that slumbered in the hearts of those who came near. And always, the whispers of the missing pages clung to its legend like a phantom limb. Storytellers spoke of secret brotherhoods that still sought the lost leaves, believing that within them lay the final pieces of a puzzle capable of unlocking gates long sealed. Occultists and mystics, too, were drawn to the Codex, meditating upon its strange illustrations, decoding symbols that mainstream scholarship dismissed as madness. Through it all, the Codex Gigas endured, timeless and untamed. Its surface remained unchanged, but within it lived the memory of every hand that touched it, every mind that dreamed upon it, every soul that shuddered before its silent gaze. It became more than parchment and ink. It became a threshold, a living testament to humanity's yearning for what lies just beyond the veil. And still it waits, in the cold vaults of our world, whispering to those who would hear, not the clamor of history, but the music of something far older, something that never truly left. There are some who believe the Codex Gigas is not merely a book, but a living entity, a being crafted from ink and skin, imbued with a consciousness that lingers beyond the sum of its materials. Look closely and you will feel it. The way the script moves across the pages, not merely with precision, but with an eerie, rhythmic pulse, as if breathing. The way the illustrations seem to shift subtly in the corner of the eye, never changing yet never truly still. The way the massive tome exudes a presence in any room it inhabits, heavy, watchful, patient. Throughout history, mystics and sensitives have whispered that the Codex Gigas is not passive. It chooses who may touch it, who may glean a glimpse of its deeper layers, and who shall be turned away with only confusion and dread. Like a guardian of forgotten wisdom, it tests the heart and soul of the seeker, revealing only what one is ready or destined to confront. The portrait of the devil, seated in his solitary dominion, is not merely an illustration, they say, but a sigil, a binding mark of power, woven into the very fabric of the book to ensure that only those who can withstand the gaze of their own inner darkness may proceed further. It is a mirror, reflecting the hidden fears and unspoken desires lurking within every soul who dares to look. Some traditions suggest that the Codex shifts subtly over time, rearranging its energies, altering the vibrations encoded within its ink. To one reader, it may reveal ancient secrets of healing and spirit flight. To another, only the cold geometry of fear. The manuscript's mysteries are not fixed, they are alive, a labyrinth that grows deeper the longer one walks its winding halls. Perhaps this is why the missing pages were not simply torn, but hidden. For to interfere with the Codex is to tangle with a will older and stronger than the hands of kings or monks. It guards its own heart, offering only pieces of itself to those it deems ready. To those who approach it with arrogance, it remains mute stone and silent parchment. But to the humble, the reverent, the brave, the Codex becomes a doorway, not into madness, but into remembrance. A path back to the places we knew before the world was wrapped in iron and sleep. And so the Codex Gigas endures not merely as an artifact of the past, but as a living riddle, a fragment of the world before the fall of memory, a sentinel of the mysteries that once sang in every river, every mountain, every heartbeat. It is not simply a book to be read. It is a being to be met, and perhaps, if fate allows, to be understood. The Codex Gigas does not clamor for attention. It does not shout its secrets into the world's deafened ears. It waits, silently, patiently, for the few who remember that true knowledge is not seized by force, but received through surrender. The missing pages, torn and hidden, were not meant to seal away the manuscript's power forever. They were a test, a sacred veil drawn across the gateway, daring only those with the eyes of the soul to find the path inward. For even in absence, the Codex speaks. Even in silence, it sings. The lost knowledge it carries cannot be pieced together by mere intellect. It must be reawakened within, reassembled not through research, but through the stirring of ancient remembrance, long buried in the blood and bones of humanity. In the symbols of its strange plants, the cycles of its unknowable stars, the flowing rivers encircling its pages, a deeper message endures, that all wisdom worth seeking already sleeps within us, that the pages we seek to recover were never only parchment and ink, but fragments of our own forgotten soul. Those who stand before the Codex Gigas today may not find answers spelled out in neat lines. They may not discover spells of power or charts to lost worlds. But if they are willing to look beyond the surface, to see not with the eyes of conquest, but with the eyes of wonder, they may yet glimpse the shimmering thread that binds the manuscript to the beating heart of existence itself. For in every missing page there is an invitation to awaken the intuitive eye, to remember the music of the stars before language chained them to numbers, to walk once more among the secret gardens of the spirit, where every leaf sings of eternity. The Codex does not hoard its treasures. It simply demands that the seeker become worthy, that we shed the armor of certainty, the blindness of pride, and step humbly into the great unknown, trusting the hidden maps written in the very fabric of our being. Perhaps the true forbidden pages are not lost to time at all. Perhaps they are waiting to be rewritten, not in vellum and ink, but in the living text of awakened souls. And so the Codex Gigas endures, a silent sentinel at the threshold of forgotten worlds, whispering to those who remember how to listen. Its secrets are not buried in forgotten libraries. They are buried in us. Budding, falling, dreaming of the day we dare to remember.